Okay, let's dive right in. In today's explainer, we're going to completely rethink a famously misunderstood era of history. We're stripping away the fiction, digging into the actual facts, and going way beyond that famous horn helmet to uncover the real truth about the Viking Age. Our mission here is pretty simple. Separate the myths from the historical reality and discover what Viking life was really like. It's time we finally peel back those heavy layers of pop culture and uncover the fascinating, actual lives of these legendary historical figures.
Section 1. The Myth We Know. Unmasking the Hollywood Caricature.
When you hear the word Vikings, your mind probably instantly conjures up these fierce warriors wearing massive horned helmets, which, actually, fun fact, those were just a 19th century opera invention. But anyway, we picture these giant brutes fearlessly sailing across dark, stormy seas, right? We imagine them relentlessly raiding coastal villages, roaring into battle, swinging absolutely enormous axes. It's a highly dramatic, super cinematic picture of these terrifying, axe-wielding raiders that we are all just so incredibly familiar with. But hold on a second. How much of this legendary Hollywood-style image actually matches historical reality? I mean, have we just been sold a giant caricature?
Which brings us to Section 2. Establishing the Viking Age, grounding the reality in time and place.
The contrast here is honestly pretty striking. We've got to totally discard this myth of relentless horned monsters and recognize the reality. These were real people living in a complex, actual historical society. They weren't just chaotic raiders spawning out of nowhere. They were deeply grounded in specific regions with rich, deeply established cultural traditions.
Yeah, the Vikings didn't just magically emerge from the ocean mist. They were firmly rooted in the harsh, beautiful landscapes of Scandinavia. They were building resilient communities, establishing robust laws, and forging a deeply connected way of life way before they ever even took to the seas. And the geography of Scandinavia, with its deep fjords, dense forests, and absolutely freezing winters, literally dictated their survival strategies. They had to be incredibly innovative. They even developed sophisticated political systems like these early governing assemblies where free men would gather to make laws and settle disputes. So this was actually a highly organized, localized society that was intricately tied to the land they called home.
And, this civilization didn't last forever. The Viking Age flourished in a very specific historical window. It kicked off roughly in the late 8th century, and that was sparked in part by some massive advances in their shipbuilding technology, plus, of course, the desire for wealth and new lands. From there, it peaked through the 9th and 10th centuries as their incredible longships basically dominated the waterways of Europe, but eventually it came to an end in the 11th century. Now, this end didn't happen because they just vanished off the face of the earth. It was more of a slow integration. The Norsemen gradually converted to Christianity, and those independent chiefdoms centralized into the broader medieval European political landscape. So we're talking about a solid, roughly 300-year window where this entirely unique culture flourished and, quite frankly, completely transformed the globe.
Moving on to Section 3. Beyond the battlefield, the multifaceted Norsemen.
Okay, yes, combat was definitely a part of their world. We can't deny that. But to reduce their entire civilization to just raiding and fighting, that completely ignores the sheer richness of their daily lives. They were warriors, absolutely, for sure, but they were also so much more than that. Their society actually required a massive, highly coordinated division of labor just to survive, let alone thrive in such an unforgiving environment.
Just think about this. They were brilliant farmers who somehow coaxed crops from freezing, unyielding soil and raised resilient livestock to survive those brutal Scandinavian winters. They were global traders, and I mean truly global, with incredibly vast networks stretching all the way from the Middle East to North America. They were exchanging local amber, iron, and furs for silver and exotic spices. They were absolutely fearless explorers, crossing uncharted, treacherous oceans, using just the sun, the stars, and the flight of birds to navigate. How crazy is that? They were also masterful craftsmen, forging durable tools and building these remarkable, shallow draft ships that could somehow withstand the open ocean while still being able to navigate shallow inland rivers. On top of all that, they were dedicated settlers who built thriving new communities in completely uninhabited lands and world-class sailors who literally revolutionized maritime travel. It was these vital, brilliant, everyday occupations that truly sustained their legendary society.
So, if the iconic horned helmet is really just a myth, what else about Viking history remains to be discovered? What other deeply held historical assumptions might we need to completely rethink? Just keep that in mind the next time you picture a Viking. Thanks for exploring the facts with us today on this explainer.